welcome AMP young musicians and friends. My name is Lolly Newsom, and I'm excited to welcome you all to our AMP online masterclass series sponsored by the Chestnut Family Foundation. This class is on scales and techniques for intermediate violin, part 2 of a 4-part class with Grant Gilman. If you are a musician, I invite you to play along, especially our violinists. And if not, you can listen along and take notes. This class is for everyone, every musician, anyone who wants to learn about violin. If you have any questions, the chat will be open for the entire class. It's a 45-minute class. And we also have a question and answer function. So if you have any questions, comments, anything you want to say, feel free to use any of those options. So Grant, take it away.
All right. Well, welcome back. Can't remember who all was here last time, but so I wanted to start off again with scales. So this is still the Ivan Galamian system of scales. So I wanted to move on to the A major scales. You can see again, I tried to edit it so that we'd only see the fingerings that we want to use here. So we're going to go up to third position here, right? And then go up once again, whatever position that is, sixth position, right? And then 4/4 at the top, and then come back down to third position and first position, both on the E string. So, no big deal. And hopefully, Wally, you can let me know if this doesn't sound like anything. I'm sure it sounds terrible, but I think it's coming through. You can hear it?
Yeah, and in the chat, guys, you can let us know if you can't hear it, if it's too loud, too quiet.
Okay. So this is at 50 beats per minute. All right, so we're going to start off with just 2 to a bow, all right, just to get warmed up. And then before we move on to the other faster ones, I'm going to talk a little bit about hand position. So let's just start with this. All right, here we go. So A major, 3 sharps. Here we go. 3. So this is as if this beat was the quarter note. So we're going to be going 8 notes. Ready, and. The last time, scales are meant for us to work on some obvious things like intonation, slurring, shifting, all of those things. And then we can also add in other things to think about along the way that help us to focus on it just a little bit. So one thing I wanted to talk about today was something we don't often think about too much beyond maybe the first few weeks or months we start playing the instrument. And that's what part of the finger is touching the string. Now this is under the bigger category of hand position. Where exactly is the best place for the hand to be to get a consistency of intonation, a consistency of form, of shape and everything for the instrument. And so within that, I've always found that you have to think about one particular thing. We like the phrase or the idea of being able to multitask, but in reality, we do not multitask. The brain does not multitask. What it does is it pings from one thing to the other, and so whatever you're not focusing on goes into the background, and the subconscious takes care of, which is fine, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily getting better just because you're doing 2 things at the same time. So we always try to focus on one particular thing. So I found that the easy thing to focus on when getting used to this and improving hand position is what part of the finger is actually touching the string. Now, the easy way for me to say this right now is that it's really just the tip of the finger, but I mean the tip of the finger. I always say it to young kids, and they're like, "Oh God, it's so funny, the tip of the tip." But really, it is the tip of the finger. So what that's going to be is probably for your first finger, maybe second finger, that's not going to seem so strange. But I want you to look at your fingers as you do this, and especially for third and fourth finger, what you'll feel if you really try to make sure that it's really close to the very tips of your fingers, you'll feel that this part of the inside part of your arm starts to rotate in much more towards the instrument. And that's what you're going for. There's kind of two kinds of way to think about it. Hand position. There's the octave, what we get most of the time, right? We get the octave, we get, how our fingers would be inside of an octave, which is fine, which is what we use most of the time. But then there's everything else. And everything else what's called rotated, or some people call it rotated. So this is what we call that rotated position. So as you go through this, and we'll go on to 4 to a bow. It's the same exact tempo, but we'll just do it 4 to a bow. What I want you to try, just keep in mind, because I know that most of you can play these scales pretty well anyway. Just try to keep on the top of your mind what part of the finger is actually touching the string. That's all you need to do. You're not going to get it perfectly. That's fine. No big deal. But just try to keep it on the top of your mind as we go through it. All right, so let's see. Ironically, I picked this sound because when it's not going through Zoom, there's really no pitch. But through here, it sounds like there's a ton of pitch. It's like a B. It's really annoying. But anyway, here we go. So, same thing to the 8th note. Woo. We're going to play 8 notes to this being the quarter note and 4 to a bow. So 3 and 4 and. Just keep that still in mind, what part of the finger, and before you hear anybody else, 6 and 8, and then I want to hear what you guys can do. All right, so here's 6, so this is going to be triplet to the quarter note, but 2 triplets within each bow. Yut, da, 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 da. I think I said this last time. If I do nothing else in a day, I do this. All right, I think that's as far as we went last time, but I think we're going to do 8 also this time. So it's just double. Ducka, duck, ducka, 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 ducka. So 16ths to each of these being the quarter note. Ready, and 4, 8. So, is there anybody that would like to show their ability to do singles, doubles, 4, 6, or 8? Doesn't matter which one, anything. We'll take all comers.
We've got 2 students I know that are volunteering. I'm going to pull on Vincent. He's ready. And Miles, I know you're on here if you want to play for another exercise. You can raise your hand in the raise your hand function or send a chat. Hey, Vincent.
All right, so which one do you want to do?
Oh, is he talking?
I think he was talking.
Vincent, can you hear us?
He can hear us, but we can't hear him. But we could hear him before.
All right,
oh, there it is.
Hey.
Oh, okay. Let me see you on microphone. Can I do this?
The singles?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Go right ahead. Good. You've got your own version of fingering, which is totally fine. Okay, so do me a favor. Even with just the single bows, and even at that same speed, can you try to use all of your bow, or at least much more of it? Because right now, which is totally fine. This is a perfectly legitimate area to play in, but this is the comfort zone. This takes very little effort, right, to get it to sound good. You know, for us up here, because in the upper half of the bow, it works just easier for us. So can you try to start in the middle, and if anything, stay towards the lower half, but really try to use most of the bow for every single note. Can you try that? And even it goes slower if you need to. Good, good. So, when you go up to the higher positions, one thing that can help you, because you got a little bit low going up, and then stayed a little bit high coming back down. So what you can do is part of this making sure that the fingers, it's the tip of the finger being on here. What forces us to do when we come up here, where we start to have to move around the shoulder of the instrument, obviously, this is the most awkward part, right? What it forces us to do is start to bring everything around further, rather than doing this thing where we come up the same direction we've been facing, and then basically start to point the fingers and only come up out of necessity. But so what happens if your main goal is to come at it as much from this angle this way as possible, rather than going this way, then you get a little more control, or it puts the hand in that position we need it in order to get consistent intonation. Does that make sense? Yeah? So can you try one more time? And when you start to go up higher, you can even slow down a little bit, but try to bring your hand around, and you'll also find that your elbow comes a little bit further to this side, to the right side of the instrument, or to your right side anyway. Can you try it? Good. I think that you did more of it. I can't really tell. Such is the nature of a Zoom lesson. But good, good. But try to keep it in mind, because it's going to help you the more you start to, because you're obviously comfortable up there already, and what you'll start to gain is more consistency and ease with playing up there, when you start to find this hand position, which we're all much easier and much more aware of, when you start to find that hand position up here, where we lose everything else. We lose where the thumb used to be, we lose the same grip on the instrument, and we have to be able to move quickly, a lot of the time anyway. All right? Sounds very good. Thank you, Vincent. All right, so now let's go on to an etude. So this is a little bit related to the last one, but this is going to take the technique part of it a little further, which I guess is the point. So I don't know if I would bet some of you at least are familiar with this. This is I think his first name is Franz. Franz Wolfart's studies. I don't know how many there are. It's 40-something studies. This is book 1. So hand-wise and note-wise, there is nothing too complicated about this. None of it goes out of first position. So that's not the point of this particular exercise. What I wanted to do this exercise for was for, again, this work on the bow. So we very easily put all of our focus on the left hand, but the right hand takes a little more time to develop, if only because we can get away with a lot more if it's actually the right notes or it's actually in tune. They say, well, that's better. But instead, we can take something like this, which is the left hand is not really a problem at all, and we can try to get it to help us even out the bow stroke. And I don't mean even as in the same volume the whole time or the same amount of pressure. Even as in nothing that is out of our control, so that we are either making it go more with volume or making it go less with volume, right? And so we're going to do that with speeding up the bow and slowing down the bow and keeping it steady without stopping it, without speeding it up when we don't want to, etc. So this kind of exercise does this, slurring every bar all under one bow stroke. So what we're going to do is partly just to make sure we can get the notes, but also because it's part of the difficulty of this, we're going to start pretty slow. And that's nothing. All right, so this is to the 8th note. So it's not really that fast. Now, for the notes, that's not going to be that hard. For the bow, if we get slower and slower and slower, that's going to get harder. So we're going to do both ways. We're going to get faster and be able to try to be able to control it, and we're also going to get slower and try to be able to control it. All right? But so for now, we're just going to start off at this speed. All right? So I've got my, when we get to the bottom of the page there, I've got, it's not very long. It's only one page, but I've got my pedal to turn the page when we get down there. So hopefully you can all see this, see the screen well enough. So here we go. So this is to the 8th note. So B da 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 4, 5, 6. most exciting piece ever written, but it is an exercise, so that's what we use it for. All right, so what you'll find is, obviously, there's many places where we'll have to save, and generally, this is not true for everyone, but generally for string players, usually we tend to use more bow starting at the frog, because we want to get away from this part. This is where it's more awkward. And then generally, if we're starting up bow, if we're starting somewhere from here, we'll use it slower. We'll use it, and then we'll run out here, because we were like, oh, this is so great, this is so great, oh no, I'm out, right? Same thing here. We'll be like, I gotta get away from here, okay, now good, oh, I'm out, right? So we'll start to use too much too quickly instead of saving it. So then what happens when you save and you don't account for it by not pressing in as much, then of course you get this nice little sound there, right? So that's the balance that we have to do. Now, of course, this gets infinitely more difficult the slower we go. So if we go down to, say, 70, I'm not going to do the whole thing at this tempo, but it starts to increase all of this. So how, the question you have to keep asking yourself is, how do you get it to be even? Crescendo. So here, one thing you can do to get a crescendo is you can save more at the beginning of the bar, so that gives you a couple of tools at the same time. If I save this much, I kind of intended to save more, but if I save that much, I've still got roughly half the bow to give a little bit of sound, right? If I save even more, I can wait later, and it seems like there was even more of a crescendo. Right? Now, the other thing, of course, which is true no matter what the bowing is you can use more pressure. But of course, more pressure means you need a little more movement. So you have to save the amount of pressure or the weight on the string for when you're moving a little bit more quickly, right? So there's always that balance that has to be struck, all right? So if anybody is willing for this slow part, this is going to be the harder of the two, who would like to show their abilities going, maybe back to the original 90 beats per minute tempo? I'll give it to you, but you won't have to play with it. Anybody is interested?
Let's see. We've got 3 violinists in the chat. So I think Miles or Yonde. One of you guys. See, I'm gonna pull Miles up. Miles?
Yes.
Miles, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Do you have your violin?
Yes.
All right. Can I turn on your video?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Hello.
Hey.
All right. So, do you think that you can play through this at that 90 beats per minute, or at least part of it?
The song, like the fast one.
The fast is going to be much faster when we eventually this tempo. If I leave it on, can you hear it as you play? No, you can't hear it as you play. All right. So just do your best to try to stay steady at that tempo. D, 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 D. Can you try that? And definitely make sure you try to do all of the bowing, so an entire bar in one bow. That's good. That's good. That's good. So this is exactly what we're talking about. Is there any way you can angle down a little bit? Because I want to see a little bit more of your bow. Is that possible? Or is it kind of only one angle? Oh, that's great. That's perfect. Perfect. All right. So do me a favor and just that very first bar. And if you can, I don't know if you noticed, but part of the other part of this this exercise is working on using your fourth finger. If you didn't notice that, right? So definitely no open E string in the first bar, right? So try to use your fourth finger for everything, but just try to do that first bar only going down bow the whole time. And run out of bow if you have to, but don't change to going up or any other direction. Just all one bow. Just try it. Good. So you're just playing one too many of those. So you've got, and then, right? It changes a little bit, one sooner than you think. Good, good, good. You saved much more bow that time. Now, one other thing that's going to help you, of course, in general also, but specifically here, when you're pulling down on this down bow, let's try to see if I can. What happens is you're moving out this way at the top of the bow, right? So one thing you can think of is when you pull that down bow, if you think about pulling it down in front of you just a little bit, right, as if it was out in front that way, right? Just a little bit, because you're not far off. It's not like it's really, really crooked. But if you can think of pulling out in front of you a little bit towards, you know, maybe your left foot, right? If you're standing up towards your left foot, then it'll kind of straighten it out a little bit, and that will help for the consistency of sound here. Good. And the other thing is, you want to try, and this is the harder part, is using less sound, using less pressure at the frog. But that's where you want to put the effort, is right at the very beginning, using less weight. So, you know, literally like it's, you know, it's a very small amount, but you're lifting the bow a little bit so that it doesn't get so much weight on the string. Because you're already trying, part of the reason you're hesitating is you're trying to avoid that, like, because you're moving the bow so slowly and you're trying to avoid that sound, which is good, right? So one way you could do that is you're literally gonna take some pressure off of the weight of that bow, right? Can you try that again from the beginning? So think of pointing out in front of you and then also lifting it up off the string a little bit. Good, good. So the sound was better. The sound was better. What was the only difference? What happened that you didn't want to happen?
Oh, I ran out of bow.
You ran out of bow, right? So all you got to do, I mean, it's going to happen here. It can happen at any point in the bow, but you want to go slower here. And you want to try to see, it's not necessarily easy to see, but you want to try to see that at this point in the bar, roughly, that you're about halfway through the bow. Does that make sense? Can you try it again? Yeah, you played too many at the beginning, so that's why you ran out. It wasn't because you didn't pull slow enough. Yeah? Try it again. Good, good. You pulled much slower. That's good. Now the other small thing that you can do, because you're now the bow is straighter, but the reason you're still getting this kind of rough sound is you're really close to the fingerboard over here, right? So what we call this the sounding point. So if you can move your sounding point much closer to somewhere right in between you know, the bridge and the fingerboard. And it's awkward. So now that's like I just said at the beginning, that we don't multitask well. Like the brain doesn't actually multitask, and now I'm telling you 3 things at the same time. It's kind of the way it goes for us, right? So but if you can find that sounding point that's a little closer to the bridge and straight, and then also not so much pressure, right? And don't try to make a whole lot of sound. Let the bow make the sound for you. You don't need to press. You don't need to lift up so much. You just let the bow. All you're going to do is guide the bow straight. And if you can guide the bow straight in the right spot, then it'll make the sound for you, more or less. Can you try it one more time? You try to change that sounding point. Good. His sound was better. The sound was better. You went really far over the fingerboard, though. Can you try it one more time? And just put your focus on that, trying to keep it really close to the bridge. Good, good, good. So the thing is, with an exercise like this, we take it in stages, right? So for you, you're still a little bit on the notes, which is totally fine. So you keep working with the notes, and then you start to add in the things. Now the other thing is, of course, this is slow, and that's the harder way to do this. And of course, he says allegro, so I'm just making up all kinds of stuff with this thing. But it's very good. It's very good, Miles. Thank you so much for helping out. I appreciate it. So
Miles.
what I wanted to show otherwise is what it starts to be when it gets faster. I'm going to use the word dynamics. The formula doesn't change. The formula is the same in that we are still balancing weight with speed and with distribution. But it just happens at a much faster pace. So we have to juggle all of those things together. So those of you that can, so let's try it. Let's see if this is not still. Way worse. Okay. Just leave it there. All right. So let's try it at this speed. So this is still to the 8th note, right? And even if you don't get all the notes, don't worry about that. Just keep going through it, right? Just keep moving through it. If anything, you want to focus just on what the bow does, right? So if you need to be able to find the sounding point and stay there, that works too. If you need to be able to find the sounding point and stay straight, that also works too. But just try to keep going with it on this particular thing we're doing in the masterclass setting. All right? There we go. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and. After that. All right? Is there anybody that would like to try a little bit of going faster?
See over Vincent. I'm going to see Vincent. Vincent, can you hear us? That's it. Oh, I can't hear him.
That's what happened the last time.
Mrs. Can you adjust the audio?
Can't hear you.
Whatever you did last time.
Barely.
Yay. Okay. Can you say something so we know if we can hear you? Oh, no.
Just barely.
Oh, let me see. So can you try playing something? Anything? Just a note on your violin? All right. Okay.
All right, that can work for now. All right, so can you try it at that slightly faster tempo? This thing. Just try it. Just try just a little bit of it. Good, 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 good. Good, that's great. That's great. It's very, very even. It's very even. So let's try to not switch it up, but let's try to enhance it a little bit. So we've got these two things which you had very little, if any, trouble with this with the notes at the beginning, right? We've got these two spots where we've got these crescendos at the very end. Can you make a big deal out of those? I know the thing is very behind. Those two right there. Can you make a really big deal out of those two? So start in the second bar and save as much as possible in the first half. And then use the rest of it at the end. And then start again mezzo forte. So you have to do it both directions, right? Can you try that? Yes. Yes. Good. 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 And then keep going. Keep going. Start on that bar again. This one. This weird one. It's like a tongue twister. Because this one's a little bit different. Because this one is not so evenly divided up, right? It's not like half and half. It starts it on the. That's where it starts the crescendo, right? So this one you have to use more of weight distribution rather than just the speed. You still want to save and then use more at the end, but you also have to use way less pressure and weight at the beginning and save it for the end of the bar. Can you try that just on that bar? Good, 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 good. It's really good. It's really good. The division of three in this piece kind of is easy to get confused with, right? Because we want to do daka 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 daka, right? Instead of the daka 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 daka, it's kind of like a waltz instead of in 4. But it's very good, right? So just keep working on keeping it even between the bow changes, right? So you go down and then you go up, and you're putting the tiniest bit of a little hiccup in between the two. So you've got, right, we get this tiny little bit of space in between the two. So the next thing is to start to make it sound like there is no bow change as much as possible, right? But it's very good, Vincent. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Well, it's another week.
Vincent. All right.
All right.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah,
thanks for being here.
Let's see, any shout outs. So at 5 p.m., any minute, in about 10 minutes, we have another class with Grace Kim on scales and techniques for advanced violin. So all of you guys listening, all of you violinists listening, you should tune in to that class. Some of you will be playing in that class. We have more classes during the week. Tomorrow we have a talk at 12 p.m. where we interview some AMP students, and we also interview some other youth in Atlanta involved in the art. So we have a dancer, we have 2 dancers, and then we have 3 AMP students. It's going to be a really cool talk. And on Wednesday evening at 4 and 5 p.m. we have classes with Josh Williams and Dante Rameau on horn and bassoon exercises respectively. And on Thursday we have a clarinet class with Ricky Salcedo and a sight singing class with Nan Davis. So please come to all these classes. If you're interested, and all of the information about these classes can be found on our Facebook and on our email blast. So thanks, guys. Thank you so much, Grant.
Thanks. See you guys next week.
See you next week.
Bye.